Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to be getting into my August wrap up, and I know we are already deep into September at this point. We're actually about halfway through September and I'm just now getting to you with my wrap up. Y'all, full disclosure, I have really not been feeling like myself lately, so it's been really hard to get myself to sit down and film, talk to the camera type of videos. I am just like overwhelmed with anxiety every single time I sit down to try to film a video. So I'm trying today because I really like filming wrap-ups. I know that y'all like watching them, so I'm gonna do it, but I've been feeling a lot more comfortable just filming vlog type of videos. So if there are any kind of vlogs that you want to see from me, please let me know down below, because filming these type of sit-down videos is just getting kind of difficult. It's, you know, everything to do with the situation on the internet. I just feel like everything that comes out of my mouth is gonna be picked apart by fucking idiots. So that is really hard, and I also just have a lot of like health issues going on. I need to have surgery, and I'm obviously supposed to get married in 90 days, so it is not the ideal time to get surgery, and it's just like very stressful and anxious in my world. So I'm sorry to start out this video with a bunch of heaviness, but that is just the reality of the situation. I'm kind of going through it. But the good news is I did read a lot of good books throughout last month, and I cannot wait to talk with you guys about them. Before we get into my wrap up though, I do want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Dossier. Y'all know I absolutely love working with Dossier. I've been working with them for so long. If you're not familiar, Dossier is a perfume brand, and they make some amazing scents that are inspired from probably some of your most favorite, most desired scents that you see in Sephora. For example, I have here Aquatic Coconut, which smells exactly like Beach Walk by Replica. This was like my summer scent. Oh my god, it's so good. And then I also have Gourmand Orange Blossom here, which smells exactly like La Vie Est Belle from Lancome. Oh my god, this smells like my mom. I smell this and then I'm immediately like, that's my mom. And honestly, I can never tell if she's wearing this one or the Lancome. They smell exactly like the designer perfumes, and they have the same staying power on my skin. I have really sensitive skin actually, and I've never had anything happen, no breakouts or anything. They work really well with my skin, and I get a ton of compliments on these fragrances all the time, and they're just so much more affordable than the luxury versions. So if you want to shop Dossier, as always, I will have them and my code linked down below. Thank you so much to Dossier for sponsoring this wrap up, and now let's go ahead and get into the books. As always, we're gonna start with my stats. These are all generated from Storygraph. I get that question on almost every wrap up. Y'all, I do not use Goodreads, contrary to popular belief. I almost never use Goodreads. I mostly post my reviews on Storygraph, so that is where these stats are from. As you can see, in the month of August, I read a total of 18 books, which came to 4,084 pages. And my mood breakdown was pretty standard, lots of tense, dark, and mysterious reads. As for the pacing of the books that I read in August, I was actually split down the middle, 50-50, fast-paced and medium-paced. No slow paced at all. 5 of the books that I read in August were between 300 and 500 pages, and then all the rest of the 13 were less than 300 pages per book. I had a lot of shorties, a lot of novellas this month. I did read one nonfiction book this month, and I cannot wait to tell you about it. And all the rest were fiction. As for genres, I read mostly horror, then thrillers, LGBTQIA, mystery, and then so on, but those were my top categories, and again, pretty standard. Across my star ratings, this is the phenomenal stat for me. I had an average rating of 4.15 out of 5 stars. To me, that's just incredible. Like, this is one of the best reading months I have ever had. Out of 18 books, to have an over 4-star average is just crazy to me. So I did have one book that I did not rate. That was the nonfiction true crime book. It just feels icky to me to try to rate someone's experience in real life, especially, you know, victims of a crime. I had 2 3-star books, 4 3.5-star books, 3 4 stars, 3 4.5 stars, and 5 5-star reads. And this last graph just shows the breakdown of how I read these pages throughout the month. There was only one little stretch that I didn't read anything because I was losing my mind and having anxiety attacks every single day, but the rest of the month was pretty solid. You can see at the end of the month where I did my 24-hour readathon, I read so many pages that little 24 hours, so that was fun to see. All right, that's it for stats. Now let's get into the book reviews, what you came here for. Starting out with the nonfiction true crime book that I did not rate, that is If You Tell by Greg Olson. And this was the story of this case. This horribly abusive mother just basically tortured her 3 daughters and anyone who ever came to stay with them. And it goes into a little bit of the background of how she grew up that maybe could explain why she did this. It was written in kind of a narrative style. Like, obviously all of these events actually happened, which is really, really disturbing and really, really dark and scary. But it was written as if it was like a fictional thriller. And I think that's the appeal of this book for a lot of people. That's why a lot of people recommend it, is like, if you don't usually like slogging through nonfiction, then this would probably be a nonfiction that appeals to you. But while I did, while I was kept engaged by that and it was easier to read, because of that, it also freaked me out a little bit, and I actually did not end up preferring it because I felt that it was a little tad bit, I don't know, just separated from real life. When I read true crime about things that happen to real people, I really need like the zoom out lens of like the psychology of what happened and breaking down the case from like a investigator perspective, or even just like a forensic perspective. And there was almost none of that in this book. So I was kind of left wondering, like, what is the point of me reading this? I could just read the news and be sickened by the events that are happening in real life. It just felt odd to me. It felt odd. It was extremely, extremely disturbing, and that I didn't have a problem with. I read a lot of disturbing content, so it definitely wasn't that. It was the voice in which it was written with that I really didn't love. I mean, I could tell the author had a lot of empathy for these people that he was writing about, but I just didn't really see the point. I hope that makes sense. I needed more science, more commentary, more something other than just the horrifying narrative of what happened to these people. I can get that from a fiction book without feeling like this salacious looky-loo kind of feeling of reading a true crime book that has a similar voice. I know that's like a very unpopular opinion. A lot of people really love that book. I do think it's like well written. It's just, it gave me the weird feelings, and that's my personal opinion, and this is my channel, so you know what? That's what I have to say. And next up, we're gonna get into my 3-star reads. I literally had 0 1 stars and 0 2 stars for the month, which is crazy. There were no books that I absolutely hated or even mildly disliked. Like, everything I read this month, I really pretty much enjoyed. The worst book that I read this month, unfortunately, was my Pretty Girl Book Club pick of August, which was Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister. I give this book 3 stars. It is a thriller, more of a mystery, less of a thriller, about a woman who is working this missing person case, and somehow her family is involved, so she is kind of like under corruption. She has the option to either like be this corrupt investigator and kind of like skew the case in favor of her child, or she can actually work to solve the case and find this missing girl. And then we also get the perspective of the dad of the missing girl and the mom of the son who's accused of disappearing this missing girl. So it's really all about like how far would you go for your family trope. I absolutely love that trope. I actually have an entire recommendation video just about my top 12 favorite books with that trope. If you're interested in that, I'll link it up above and down below. This book, it definitely appeals to that trope, but it wasn't the best executed. It has a lot of plot holes. It was really hard to read because of the jarring writing style. When we discussed it in my book club, the whole consensus was just like, it was confusing and not a very easy and fun reading experience. If I didn't have the audio to help me get through this, it would have taken me forever to read this book. So it wasn't very fast-paced and exciting, and a lot of the twists and even just like the plot in general was so convoluted. Like when you sit down and parse it out, it's fine and it makes sense, and some pieces are shocking, I guess, a little bit, but I want my thrillers to have twists that are effortless and not needing me to sit there and connect the red string. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a little doing too much for me. And the other 3-star book that I read in August was The Cotton Candy Massacre Part Toots by Christopher Robinson. This is the sequel to The Cotton Candy Massacre, which is one of my favorite books of last year. The first one is a horror book about this dilapidated, disgusting, broken down carnival that gets revived and brought back to life. But when it is revived, all of the old spirits that were at the park before it came to its demise come back with it. And it's I would call it not extreme in content, but extreme in gore. It has like all the appropriate trigger warnings. Actually, I think Christopher Robinson does a really good job with trigger warnings. If you want to pause, you can see the way that he does trigger warnings. I really, really appreciate that. And this isn't even like the most extreme horror out there. But I just loved the first book so much better. This one kind of took like a weird turn. It had a weird energy. It was like a convoluted, meandering plot rather than like this driving forward feeling of a slasher. The first one was such a good classic gory slasher time, and I was just like driving forward with the villains, rooting for the final girl, and it was just like such a well executed slasher. This one was just more confusing. It didn't have that driving force that I needed. So while I got through it fast and I had a fun time, there were just a lot of pieces that I was left wondering like, why? And I'm sure it was just like for fun, but I needed a little bit more like meaning and commentary with it, especially because I had already spent so much time with some of these characters. I had already built relationships with some of these characters, so I wanted a little bit more of that substance, but it was a fun time, if nothing but that. Moving on to my 3.5 out of 5-star books, we're gonna start out with The Prettiest Girl in the Grave by Christopher Triana. And I usually read extreme horror books from this author. This is not an extreme horror book. So if you've been wanting to try out Christopher Triana's writing, then you definitely can get into it with this without reading extreme content. This is just more of a straightforward horror book about 6 girls who get into some like witchy shit at a gravesite at a cemetery, and they awaken some evil spirits underneath the cemetery. As they're going through the catacombs, they have to play this game with these spirits that's called Who's the Prettiest Girl in the Grave. And it was so much fun. I absolutely loved it. The character relationships were so fun to just like navigate, and a lot of like real world feminism girly issues were just like brought up in this book that I really appreciated. Christopher Triana, I always think, writes from a women perspective really well. And while he really hasn't spoken out about things, so we really don't know where he stands on writing women or anything like that, I would love to know his perspective because he does it very well. I really enjoyed this one. There was just something keeping me from giving it a 4-star rating. I remember reading it and thinking I was gonna give it a 4-star, but obviously I can't remember at this point, so it wasn't super memorable. I just know that I had a really good time. If you're looking for a Halloween-ish related read, this would be a great one to put on your October TBR. I also read A Welcome Reunion by Lucinda Berry, and this is a novella which is also a sequel to The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry, which follows this horrifying little demon child that this couple who's struggling with infertility gets the chance to adopt, and shit hits the fan with this little girl. And now we're seeing her like 10 years in the future and checking up on Janie and everything she has going on. I was really hoping for some closure because that was like the one issue that I had with The Perfect Child, was the ending was a little too open. I know it bothered a lot of other people as well when we read it in my book club, but Miss Lucinda didn't tie up the loose ends for us. Like, she got so close to giving us the clarity and closure that we needed, and then she just did the same thing at the end of The Perfect Child, and I was like, why? Why did we do this? It was still like a very fun time, and I got a lot out of it, like getting the update on the characters, but it just felt weird to leave us on the same note that we were left on before. I think if you're gonna extend the series, there needs to be a little bit extra happening and going on that I'm being left with. Next up, let's talk about Whatever Remains of Us in the End by Brandon Baker. I do want to thank the author of this book, Brandon, for supporting me and speaking out about the whole situation on social media. Thank you so much, Brandon, for showing up for female horror reviewers and being a fucking ally. You rock, and you're also an amazing writer. I really thoroughly enjoyed this little novella. It is a haunted house story, which we all know I'm not the biggest fan of. So the fact that I really enjoyed this haunted house story, I think says a lot. And it had pretty good gore. We are basically following these two guys who are unlikely friends in their hometown, and they always grew up like thinking this house down at the end of the block was this haunted, creepy house with this creepy old greenhouse, and this witch lived there. And like logically they know the woman and the kid who lived in the house, so it's like, you know, just that local lore. So they don't really believe it, but it's like that little childhood nostalgia thing. Well, they get roped into this plot to invade this house. And so it's like giving a little bit of home invasion. And as they're trying to carry out this plot, things just go wild, off the rails. Like, never at any point will you know where this book is going. And for the majority of this book, I was gonna give it 4 stars. I just really enjoyed it, and it's really hard for me to enjoy like haunted house vibe stories, so I think that says a lot. But the ending, I was just having a lot of trouble with the endings of books this month. I was reading books that I thoroughly enjoyed the entire way through except for the last few pages, and that is exactly what happened to me with this book. So I think it could be a 4-star or even a 5-star if you're a haunted house girly. For a lot of y'all, the ending just didn't quite work for me, and I don't want to spoil what it was that didn't quite work for me, but again, highly recommend it. I really do think it's great, and I will definitely be picking up more from Brandon in the future. And my last 3.5-star novella, we had a lot of those, is Feed Them Silence by Lee Mandello. You probably heard me talk about this in my reading new release horror vlog from this past month. I will link it up above and down below if you missed it, but this is definitely more sci-fi than horror. I found out once I got into it. It's very short. It's only 100 pages, and it's about this woman. She is a scientific researcher doing this study about wolves where you can like put these little electrodes on your brain and see and feel and perceive the way a wolf sees, feels, and perceives. So it's literally like putting humans in the body of a wolf so we can try to understand animals a little bit better. But she starts to develop this parasocial relationship with the wolf pack, and we are exploring just the horrifying and disturbing ways that it affects her marriage with her wife. There's really wonderful queer representation in here, and there's really interesting sci-fi content. It's very disturbing, great commentary on parasocial relationships, but the thing that held me back from, again, giving it a 4-star, instead I had to go with 3.5 because it was just a little too heavy with the writing a lot of times. It was just like bogged down. That's the best way that I can describe it, is it felt like just heavy, scientific. The font is really small. Like, let me show you an example. Like, please look at these pages. Please look at that. Oh, if it's taking me like 2 to 3 minutes to read a page, girl, come come on, make the font a little bit bigger, hurry it up a little bit. Like, the pacing just needed a little kick in the pants. And next up, let's get into my 4-star books. First up, we have another one that I featured in that horror vlog, and that is Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca. And it is really hard to give a synopsis of this book. But we're basically trying to figure out what's going on with the disappearances in this small town, but it's way more than that, okay? It is way more than that. There's a lot of commentary in here about like what it means to be different, what can happen to you if you're different, and if you're grieving, and if you're gay, and if you are disabled, or anything like that. And there's this like dark force in the town that just does not like that in its residents, so it starts to prey on them, and it goes super like trippy, off the rails, fantastical vibes, which I enjoyed because I liked the commentary of it and I liked the actual experience of it. It was very intense, very graphic, very scary. But the reason why I couldn't give it a 5, why I just landed at a nice little 4, is because I think it just hit that point where the commentary was a little too much and it just started to fly over my head a little bit. Like, I found myself thinking about the commentary instead of just letting it wash over me, and that's a good cue for me to know that it's not hitting in the way that I want it to. So that was my only issue with this book, but otherwise I really love it. I really love Eric LaRocca's writing style always. I know it's like a very niche writing style, but it clicks with me. Next up, I am so excited to tell y'all about this juicy little thriller I have here. This is The Spare Room by Andrea Bartz, and I absolutely love this book. Oh my god, I had so much fun with it. There's so much like scandal, drama, romance in here. Girl, that smut came out of nowhere, and I was literally... Don't look at me. Basically, this is about a woman who starts quarantining during the pandemic with her like long lost high school friend and her husband, and she has her bisexual awakening in this home with these 2 hot people. It's like, picture your little bisexual frustrated self moving into a home with the hottest and kindest and richest couple, and then they're like, hey, do you want to like be a part of our little relationship? But then you start to suspect that they are murderers. Yeah. The mystery plot was giving. The murder mystery of it was everything. The bisexual vibes, everything. The creepy, weird, like uncomfortable character dynamics. Oh my god, I was living for all of it. The pacing in this book was just a little bit odd. I really enjoyed everything about this book. It was just the pacing that I was like finding it weird to switch between like really graphic smut to like slow paced kind of thriller. It was like whoa, throwing me for a little bit of a loop, which maybe was intentional, but meh. Also, I did guess some of the things that unfolded in here that I think were intended to be shocking. So, I don't know. I want to care more about those things and like give it more weight in my rating, but I had so much fun with this book that I'm like, 4 stars. I really liked it. And my last 4-star book I have to talk about is Drowning by TJ Newman. You probably also saw the reading vlog of me reading this book along with the other TJ Newman book in a taste test. Again, if you missed that one, I'll link it up above and down below. That was such a fun vlog. I absolutely loved filming it. It was during Austin Pride weekend, so it's just a blast. And I really liked this book. It wasn't as good as the other one by TJ Newman, which I'll talk about a little later on in the wrap up, but basically we are following this plane that does a crash landing in the ocean. And so you're thinking like, okay, everybody's dead, but there's this little air pocket in the plane. So these people are surviving in this plane at the bottom of the ocean, and we're trying to watch them get rescued, and their oxygen is running out. It is so high stakes, so fast paced, just like binge it in one day vibes, because it's the like survival story of these people and you just literally need to figure out what happened. So you're like flipping pages like a mad woman, or at least I was. And I love the way that TJ Newman writes characters. They all feel just like real people. It's written with a lot of empathy and understanding, and TJ Newman herself was actually working in the airline industry at one point, so everything, it feels really, really accurate and true to life. And yeah, I just loved it. It was great. Not quite as good as Falling. There were some parts that lulled compared to Falling. It didn't keep that like straight through energy the entire time, but still really, really loved it. Next up, let's talk about my 4.5 out of 5 rated books. These were almost favorites. They were almost there, but something teensy teeny tiny just held me back. And the first one is The Loudest Scream by R.L. Stine. This is the second book in the Fear Park little trilogy offshoot from the Fear Street series. And so we're following this spirit of one of the Fear family members who is determined to keep this amusement park from being built in Fear Street land. I forget the name of the town, like Shady something or other. And I gave the first one in this little trilogy 5 stars because I literally just loved it. I ate it up. It was so fun. This one wasn't quite as good as that one. It wasn't quite as exciting and graphic, and it was kind of weird. Like, it was just giving kind of weird vibes. Like, some of the kills in this book, I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is kind of unhinged. But I still really enjoyed it. I don't know, guys. It's literally a Fear Street book. Like, it's not that deep, but it was fun. I also have Mayfly by CJ Lead. This book was a whole roller coaster. If you watch the vlog, then you know, like, I was literally every 2 seconds, I read this being like, I love it, I hate it, I love it, I hate it, I love it, I hate it. And I feel like it was intentional. Like, this book was messing with me, and that was part of the like meta experience of the book. It was part of the commentary. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too hard about it, but that's what I thought. But basically in this book, we're following this woman named Mayfly, and she is a freak. She is a weirdo. She's basically like the female version of that Jughead clip where he's like, have you ever seen me without my hat? Yeah, that's weird. I'm weird. She's a weirdo. She listens to Halloween music only, and she kills people. So we're following her as she gives into her murderous impulses, but she's also trying to do like a little bit of soul searching and figure out who she is, who she eventually wants to be, who she wants to be with. And it turns into a little bit of a hockey romance. So there's that. It's so odd. It is so odd. And I know that I ended up loving it, but it was so challenging that I just couldn't give it the full 5 stars. So we landed on a 4.5. I don't know. Honestly, I can't even articulate the way that I felt about this book. You just have to see the up and down journey that I went on. So go watch the vlog. And the last 4.5 out of 5 star book that I had in the month of August is You Can Trust Me by Wendy Hurd. And y'all, this is one of the most underrated thrillers of the year. I'm calling it right now. It is so good. The only reason I took off that 0.5 star was because it was a little too short. I literally just wanted more. That was the thing. I literally just wanted more of it. There wasn't enough. Again, the ending. That's like a weird thing. That's a theme of August. The endings weren't jiving with me. But everything else in this book is fire. No pun intended. Basically, in this book, we are following 2 girls who are vagrants. They just kind of like move around. They move and shake. They don't have like a settled home. They just kind of do whatever they want. In California, they drive around and they meet rich men and they scam them. Exactly, perfect, yes, everything I want. Well, the scam goes a little too far this time. They get separated and then one of them goes missing. So we're following one as she's trying to find her missing scam partner BFF, and then we're following the other one as she's enduring this horrifying scenario, and then we're uncovering even more secrets and lies along the way about rich men and the fucking patriarchy and how we hate that. The feminist commentary was really giving for me. It was literally everything I needed at the time that I read this. It was so fun, so fast-paced, so easy to read. Drama, secrets, lies, but also like realness, commentary, meaning. It was the duality and the twists. The twists! Ooh, it was giving Pretty Girls. It was really giving Pretty Girls for me. If you like Pretty Girls and you read it on my recommendation, you gotta read You Can Trust Me. It's not as good. It's not the all-time favorite that Pretty Girls is for me, but this smacked. And lastly, we have my top 5 books of the month, my 5-star reads. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna start out talking about Waif by Samantha Kolesnik. Oh my God, this book was crazy. This book was absolutely hog wild. Like, that is the only way I can describe it. So this is an extreme horror book. Know that going in. And it's also extremely, extremely hard to find. I think it's out of print, along with True Crime by Samantha Kolesnik, which for me was also a 5-star book. Very, very sad that it's hard to find these two, but I did find them on Audible. That is where I listened to Waif. It's about this woman in an abusive relationship and she wants to get out of it. So she kind of like preys on her abuser's fragile ego in a way. Like, she knows this man in and out, and even though he's an evil piece of shit, she like knows how to manipulate him. So she starts playing on all his insecurities because only weak, fragile men would ever hurt a woman. So he becomes obsessed with like getting all these plastic surgeries to become her dream man. And I'm not going to tell you what else transpires because it gets crazier. It literally just goes off the rails from there, but I don't want to spoil anything. Just know this book is batshit, okay? If you want some weird ass body horror with feminist commentary and like just a trip of a book, you gotta read this. I don't want to say too much because I literally can't talk about what I want to talk about without giving spoilers. Read it, come back to me, we will discuss. Next up, I want to talk about maybe one of my favorite books ever written. This is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau. And again, Caitlin is one of the authors that was super, super vocal about her support for me in my situation and standing up for all women in horror. I really, really appreciate her voice. Something about the way that she spoke when she was making TikToks about the whole situation, just like, oh my God, why am I gonna cry again? Like, it literally makes me cry every time I hear her talk about it. I don't know what it is. She's just like a very empathetic soul, and I really, really appreciate her voice, both like speaking on important things and also fictionally. I loved this book. It was a harrowing read. It was so deeply unsettling. The horror of it was generational trauma, attachment issues, mental health, like homophobia, real life unsettling horrors, but in this like fun house, haunted house, distorted hyperbole. I don't even know. Basically, this girl is going on a retreat getaway with her mom to try to mend things before her wedding to her fiance, who is a woman. So she's about to marry her future wife, and her mom is basically homophobic and like not down with it. So she's trying to mend things, and the attachment trauma just goes off. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. And like, I saw exactly where this book was going for the majority of it. So the twist wasn't like crazy shocking, but the dread and the suspense that was building was just masterful. I love the way this book was written. I love the writing style. I was highlighting the house down because I felt so seen. The commentary, the characters, they felt so real and tangible. The atmosphere, oh my God, if you like a snowy, isolated atmosphere, this. Like, this literally, I feel like Stefan from SNL. Like, this book had everything. It had everything. Trauma, feminism, queer rep, isolated horror, like weird visuals, body horror, all of it. It had all of it. I loved it. This book has not one flaw. It's literally one of my favorite things I've ever read. So there we go. Next, let's talk about Along the River of Flesh. We have a repeat author. This is the second book that I read in August by Christopher Triana, and this is yet another sequel. I also read a lot of sequels in the month of August. This is the sequel to Gone to See the Riverman, which was one of my favorite books of last year. It's an extreme horror book about this little groupie who is doing this task. She's going to see the Riverman for this serial killer who's in jail in order to help him escape prison. So, spoiler alert, a little bit, but like I think we can assume this. now the man's out. And we're following the aftermath of what this man is gonna do. Why, basically, he had his little groupie go see the Riverman, and we're following another cast of characters who get caught up in his antics. And when I think about this duology, like Gone to See the Riverman and this, there's just like a very certain image that comes into my head. This place is real to me. Like, I know that it's a book, but this place is real. Like, this exists somewhere in my mind. That is how masterful this world has been crafted. That is how much imagery is in this story. That is how these characters feel so real. And those are the best parts about Christopher Triana's writing to me. This is definitely very extreme, just like Gone to See the Riverman. It has some very extreme content, from gore to sexual content and everything in between. It is freaky. It is scary. I was shaking in my boots. It is fast paced, but it also has, you know, the meaning, the commentary, the weird trippy shit, and like cosmic almost kind of horror that I like so much. I love it. If you are an extreme horror girly that wants to sell your soul to the devil, read this book. Not actually. Like, you know, I'm kidding when I say that, right? Because sometimes I have comments that are like, this girl, she's supposed to be a Christian girl, and she's... Calm down. Literally, if you're about to comment that, calm down. Nobody's actually selling their soul. We're just reading books that ignite the mind. So just calm the fuck down. Can you tell, like, I've had it? Can you tell I've had it? I've literally had it. I'm literally fighting comments before they're made. Like, this is a trauma response. That's what it is. Anyway, can we just get through the last 2 books, Hailey? Let's go. Okay, let's talk about Falling by TJ Newman. Oh my god. Yes. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Some of the bad reviews of this book say that it's like a bad 80s B movie. And I would like to say yes. And that is why I liked it. Basically, in Falling, we're following a very similar scenario to Drowning, where this plane is crashing because the pilot is in this like blackmail hostage situation where his family is being held hostage by a gunman, and someone gets him a message on the plane that says, we're either gonna shoot your whole family or you're gonna crash the plane. Who are you gonna save? And so he has this massive moral dilemma. We see him struggling with that, and it's also like a heartbreaking, like breakneck pace to save everyone involved. And it feels like there's no possible way that it's gonna happen, but like things go on. Oh my god, it's crazy. It's crazy. The twist, the pacing, the way that I cared about the characters, the way that I flew through this book, like everything about it was so good. But really what stood out to me is, you would think this would be a plot driven book, and it definitely is. Like, that plot really drives this book, but it didn't lack on the character development. That was my number one concern, and it usually is my number one concern going into a really plot driven book, because that usually does not connect with me. But this one had wonderful character development. I love the way TJ Newman crafts characters that feel real, genuine, empathetic. It was just great. Just great. I loved it. I cannot wait to read more from her. And last up, we have my favorite book that I read in the month of August. And probably the book that put me in the most like harrowing dilemma. Okay, I was having an identity crisis when I read this book, but now I am proudly touting it as one of my favorite books of all time, and that is Dead Inside by Chandler Morrison. And I bet you literally never thought that you would hear that come out of my mouth if you know anything about this book. People literally hate this book, and it is depraved, and it is disgusting, and it is extreme. Although after speaking with Chandler Morrison, the author, he does not identify as an extreme horror writer. He actually doesn't really enjoy writing extreme horror from what he told me, but it does come across that way because of the level and the descriptions of the content in this book. I think you should go into reading this as if it is literary and it is satire, because that is what it is. I think that people mislabeling this and just saying this extreme horror book, like, they don't get it. They don't get it. They don't get it. This is another one that I really feel like you just have to watch the vlog to understand the extent of my feelings reading this book. This book was a journey for me. I went in thinking I was going to give it 1 star, and then I realized that the author was aligned with me. And that was a very powerful moment. I'm going to give you the synopsis now, but don't judge it based on that, please. Okay, we're following a man who is a necrophile, okay? And then we're following this woman who is cannibal. And their romance. Yeah, it's gory, it's gross, it's disturbing, it's crazy. It's all of those things. It is shocking. It is funny. Extreme horror is really hard to do humor and satire well, but this is the best way that I've ever seen it done. There was so much to say in this book. If you didn't get things out of this book, you weren't paying attention to the subtext. The subtext in Chandler Morrison's writing, especially after reading more from him this month, I can say with full confidence is so rich, so plentiful. This man is such an enigma to me. Like, I really cannot figure him out, and I don't know if I want to. I think I just want to let him be an enigma and take in his fictional words, because what the fuck? I love it. I love it. I don't know. If you are sick of edgelords and you want to read something that completely drags them to filth in the best and most eloquent way, you gotta read Dead Inside. You got to. You got to. It is so smart. It is so clever. It is scary, okay? Just look up the trigger warnings. This book is not going to be for everyone. In fact, I would say this book is for maybe like 2% of people. But for those girlies who get it, like, we literally get it. We get it. So I hit myself in the face. That's it. That's all I have to say about that. The book that I literally thought was going to be my worst book of the year is now my favorite book of the year. So you really just never know. Always keep them guessing. So with that, those are all of the 18 books that I read throughout the month of August. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you got a couple good recommendations from this video. Let me know down below if you're gonna plan on picking up any of these books, or if you have and you have similar or not similar thoughts to me. Thank you again so much to Dossier for sponsoring this video. Y'all go check them out at the link down below and get some money off with my code. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you in the next one. Bye.